I'm going to spend a little bit of time here talking about Chapter 9, the discussion post, and also a little bit about the chapter. This chapter is about Socratic seminar. So the prompt for today's assignment is students in your class may be accustomed to discussions driven by correct answers, where the teacher is always looking for the correct answers and doing sort of a formative assessment and not asking many questions except for content of what they read and looking for correct answers. And surely there are many settings where this is appropriate. But the Socratic seminar is a context in which multiple answers to open-ended questions compete for dominance and all may be correct. So the Socratic method is different. Think about that. And do you think this approach will be difficult or easy to adopt in your grade and content area? What can you do to ensure that every opinion and perspective is honored in the seminar setting? Now, I don't want you to do a big, long, 3-page summary of the Socratic method. What I want you to do is answer these questions. You can assume that I and your classmates know what the Socratic seminar is because we've read the textbook, and you can talk about the open-ended questions. And do you think it's going to be easy to adopt in your grade and content area, or do you think it's going to be difficult? Tell us why. And then if it is adopted, if you have any say in it or not, I mean, if you're going to have to use it, whatever, what can you do to ensure that every opinion and perspective is honored in the seminar setting? Make sure that your emphasis as you're writing from beginning to end is on Socratic seminar and answering these questions. Because we're looking for, are you answering the prompt? And you're focusing in on the prompt, not things that I'm not asking about. Let's go on to the chapter. Okay, I have my Chapter 9, Socratic seminar model, generalizing from data. And so the basis for the Socratic seminar model. This was a long, long time ago in ancient Greece, where Socrates had a method of teaching students, and he wrote about it. That had been used before that time. It was a very common methodology, but he was probably the first one of significance who wrote down what was actually happening, and he modeled it for us in one of his writings. But that's the way learning has been going on for almost forever. And someone in authority, someone with experience, somebody with wisdom asks questions. And the person who is learning will respond to the questions. And then the wiser person will ask more questions to help refine the thinking of the student. And so there are various versions of Socratic seminar. And you think back the colonial days, and you think back in the Middle Ages, people would read, but they didn't have multiple choice tests. They didn't have true false. They didn't have fill in the blank. Writing was very tedious. Writing was tedious, and so most learning actually came from reading and from hearing, mostly from hearing and some by reading as well. But writing was so tedious that there was not very much writing that went on in education. That has changed. And it has changed dramatically since we have electronic communication, electronic writing with our tablets and our computers and things like that, that we can write quicker and faster, and we can revise much quicker than in the old days, like when I was a college student. So there are different versions of the Socratic seminar, different ways of questioning, different formats. You can read about those. Some of them are sort of common sense in the way that they approach it, but lots of different ways you can do this. And then there are examples of question types. Now okay, so the examples of question types. And in the textbook, they have a big list here, and basically you can ask the questions at all the different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. I'm going to use the old Bloom's taxonomy model, and in that one where you have the knowledge level questions, you have some understanding level questions, you have the application, the analysis, the synthesis, and then the evaluation. And there are different questions throughout the chapter at these different levels. And basically you're going from one level to another as the student refines their thinking. Generally, it is the teacher who is asking most of the questions and the students who are responding, but then you can have you're training your students also to be able to be questioners as well. And that's part of the different versions of the Socratic seminar, is trying to get students more engaged. Now this would work great one-on-one, and it's almost something that happens when you do your oral examinations, is sort of a modified form of the Socratic seminar, where the professor will ask the master's degree student or doctoral student a question, and as they answer, then we ask them another question, and this becomes a learning situation, not just knowing what the right answers are, what they know, but helping them to learn as well as we question them. So it's something that we use and has been very, in the higher, more elite schools, they use this a lot, private schools, especially on the East Coast. Okay, the question types, we talked about those. Now the steps in the Socratic seminar model. You, the teacher, choose the text, written, visual, or audio. You find something worth talking about or exploring. And students hopefully have read it ahead of time, have watched it ahead of time, or they listened to it ahead of time. Now step 2 is also the teacher. You plan and cluster several questions of varying cognitive demand. You make dozens of questions that you would like to ask the students, individuals, groups, whole class, whereas originally the Socratic seminar is usually just with one student or maybe a handful of students. Here you have a whole class, and you might go around to groups and ask your questions, but what are the other groups doing while you're doing that? And whole class, it's a little cumbersome at times, but you might be able to figure it out, and that's part of your prompt for this week, for this chapter. Okay, so you plan and cluster several questions of varying cognitive demand. Now you go and you start with the students. Steps 1 and 2 you do in your lesson preparation, and you keep record of this so you can use it again the next year with the same topic. Step 3, introduce the model to the students. They might have used it before, you might have used it your students before, but reinforce it. Give them the ground rules. Who speaks? How do you take turns? How do you keep from dominating? How do you get the student who doesn't want to participate or is unprepared, encourage them to participate, so forth. So you introduce the model to the students, then you conduct the dialogue as is described in the textbook, and then after that you review and summarize the seminar. You're the adult in the room, you have more understanding than the students, and you try to remember what the different students said, and you try to tie it all together for the students, probably with their help, because the more interactive it is with your students, the better. Finally, you evaluate the seminar with the students based on previously stated criteria, which is what you gave them when you introduced the model to the students in step 3. So how did it go? Now, evaluating learning in the Socratic seminar model, there's going to be a lot of formative assessment, because you are increasing students' understanding by your feedback and by them searching for answers. There's a lot of metacognitive learning going on, so they're doing a lot of self-assessment. And then, of course, you can always have them summarize what went on or what they learned. You can give them a traditional essay to write. There are several different things you might be able to do to evaluate the learning in the Socratic seminar model. So if you have any questions, please give me a call.